Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. A little different video for you. As mentioned before, winter's on the way, so go down to the shed here, fire up the 97, get it up to the garage because I got to do a little suspension work. Okay, guys and girls, this is why it's coming out. See that? That bearing's shot. And listen to this one. Yeah, it's done too. Plus it looks like the nylon slides are pretty much wore out here. Now, in order to get this suspension out, you need to loosen off the track here. There's a jam nut and an adjuster bolt on both sides, okay? 9/16 in there, and break that adjuster nut free on both sides, and then back off the adjuster so that there's lots of slack in the track, and then we'll move on. Now you may have to loosen off these two bolts on the rear idler wheels. That's what I had to do. Get a little chummy bar under there and work that suspension, or work these idler wheels forward so you get this slack in the track here. You can see how it's loosening up. Give that a little more. Get it as loose as I can. Now the track's loose. There's 4 bolts, 2 on each side, one here and one up there, right here. Now you want to crack each one of these bolts loose one at a time. You do not want to take the entire bolt out. The shaft runs all the way through the suspension. So there's a chance you take this one out, you won't be able to get the other one out because the shaft will turn instead of the bolt. Okay, so be aware of that. You may have to loosen this one off and the other one might not loosen. Come back, tighten this one, loosen that one. Gotta do what you gotta do. Then once you do have them free, then you can take each one of them out. Take this one out, take that one out on the other side. And then the same thing, take the front ones out, and the suspension should just drop out. So, machine is jacked way up in the air. I'll try to get you guys to sit here where I want you. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I'll fall over. Remove the spring. Let it spin back on both sides and the suspension should collapse. Might have to get a little higher. There's that one. Now, to get the skid frame out, you can see it's collapsed now. I put a piece of 2x2 under here and have a ratchet strap just holding the weight of the track, so you're not trying to deal with that weight. And then you just wiggle it and work it, and be leery of the heat exchangers if you've got them. You don't want to compromise those and have to have them fixed or replaced. And you can see the skid is out. Got the suspension up here on the stand, and I'm going to order new bearings for the rear axle wheels, bearings for the idler wheels, and at least a pair of new plastic slides. So when those parts get here, I'll bring you back. We'll get busy and do some installation. Okay, it's been a few days. Parts have arrived. Got some snow in the air. Let's go in the garage and get started. Okay, so these are the parts that I ordered. Number 11 Polaris slides. They're a universal fit. They have a hole here at each end for the mounting hole. So there is no left, there is no right. Bearings. 6004s for the rear axle for these three wheels. The other these other idler wheels, they take a 6205. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull a wheel, show you how to get the bearing out and back in, put back on, and then I'll do the rest of the suspension. And then when I come back after that, we'll put we'll put one of these slides in. Now, this suspension frame is pretty much just basic, nuts and bolts. So, take one wheel off, service it, put it back on. That's what I'm going to do. Some of these axle assemblies, like these, you may have to disassemble the entire axle. Just remember where all the bushings and spacers go when you put it back together. So we're going to get this one wheel off here. I've already got it started. Now, if you have an air ratchet or an impact, make things go a little faster, but I'm not in a rush. There's the wheel assembly, and remember where the washers go. Washer on each side, and there's a little spacer there. Got my vise opened up wide enough to sit on the edges of the collar of the wheel, like so. I got a brass punch. If you don't have a brass punch, maybe a little block of wood will even do. Just gonna give that a little tap with a hammer, and there's the bolt right there, and half of the bushing. Okay, there's a bushing. There's the metal collar, and then there's a two-piece bushing here. Usually half of that comes out. Didn't this time, so I'm gonna have to get a little screwdriver in there and just move that out of the way. Oop, on the floor. There's one. And just flip it over like so, and there's the second one. Sorry about that, guys. There's the second bushing. They're both the same. It doesn't matter which side they came out of. So now we have the wheel assembly is down to just the wheel. and the bearing. Now, what holds the bearing in is this internal circle clip. If you have a set of circle clip pliers, you know, that's great. You can get these pretty cheap, and you know, then you'll have them forever. If you don't, you can sharpen the tips of some needle nose pliers to get into those two holes. Now, these clips have a tendency to get gummed up after some time, so I'm not going to be able to hold the camera and get the shot, but I'm going to compress the clip and take a little screwdriver, put it in the edge here, and then get that clip to pop out. Okay, so the clip is out of the wheel. It's a little, it's the tension's off it. There it goes. It's out. It's all rusted. It's all gummed up in the crack. So there, that's out. Now, the clip's out, as you can see. So we're going to take this open side, put it face down in the vise. Now, if you have a socket, you can put a socket on here, knock this bearing out. I'm going to just use the brass punch, put it on the edge, bang, bang, and punch out that bearing. There it is. There's the wheel and the old bearing. So get some WD-40, clean up all of this rust in here, make sure it's the crack where the clip goes in, this groove here, nice and clean, so when I reinstall it, it seats really well. Now, closed up the vise a bit so the wheel can sit on top of there. The recess for the bearing, all cleaned up with WD-40 and a piece of paper towel. The clip, I just ran wire wheel and the cordless drill, that guy right there, yeah, over the clip, so it's all nice and clean. So we can set that away till after. And oops, sorry, got brand new bearing out of the package. It doesn't matter which way in it goes, it's the same. It has a little shoulder on it right here, so it should go in fairly easy. Just set it on the top. And then I'm going to take a piece of 2x4, set it right there, get that hammer, give it a smack down into place. Just like that. Now I can take the brass punch and seat it into place. Now, you don't want to hammer on the center portion of the bearing. You want to hammer on this little piece right here, this external portion of the bearing, because if you take the chance of messing this up, you're going to have a bearing failure. Hammer the bearing in by hitting it on the edges here. So I'm going to do that. That's pretty straightforward. And then we'll be ready to put the clip back in. So as you can see, the bearing is now seated into the wheel, and it's time to put the clip back in. Whoops, sorry about that, guys. Clip back in, and all I did is make sure it was seated with a screwdriver by pushing on the edges. So here's the finished assembly. make sure it goes back on the way you took it off. And it seems to be always the clip. The internal C-clip goes to the inside of the suspension. So bushing in this side, flip it over, a bushing in this side, just like that. They just snap in. There's the bolt, the original bolt right there. It's going to go through. It's going to be a bit fiddly. There we go. Bolt through. There's the washer. Now it's ready to go back onto the suspension. Whoops. And just draw it up nice and tight. You don't want to try to break it off or snap it off or strip it out. Put it back as tight as you found it. I'm sure there's a torque specification somewhere on the internet, but look at that. Nice and smooth, brand new bearing. I get busy, like I said, replace all of these out and then bring you back, and we'll be installing the slides. Now I have to interrupt again. I got the rear axle assembly completely apart, and this wheel, as you can see, it's deformed. I knocked a bearing into it anyway, and when I spun it, it went like this. It wobbled. No good. Have to order a new one. Now there's no point in waiting for that back wheel to show up. Carry on. Get these plastic slides off. There's an Allen wrench bolt, okay? So there's an Allen wrench head on here. I believe that's a 5/16 nut there. You gotta take this one out, take that one out, and with any luck, the nylon slide rails will just slide off the extruded channel of the suspension, and the other one will slide back on. We'll see. First things first, get these bolts out. Now, gone ahead, spun this suspension around one more time, and with any luck, like I mentioned before, I think they may have to slit them and cut them off if they're stuck on there. I think these are simply going to slide off without any issues. Now you can see the new one is considerably longer than the old one at each end because they're a universal fit. So up here you can just measure from the bolt hole and trim that end off. Slide the rail, the new rail nylon slide on, and that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to trim it once it's installed. Just leave it hanging out, you know, maybe a half of an inch, and it should be good. So let's get started on that. Now just laid the old one up against the new one, lined up the holes, and see those red pen marks are about at the end. So chop that off with whatever you have. If you got a cutting wheel in your hand grinder, or maybe an air saw or a hacksaw, whatever you got, chop it off. Alright, got that cut off. Ready to go on. Just remember, let me show you here, this little tab bit here, it's going to the outside side. There we go. Now I put the bolt back in just how it came out, And I marked this down with some tape right about here, so it's just sticking out past the extruded aluminum bit. And I'll just cut that off with the air saw. Now, if you wanted to, you could cut it all to length if you want before you put it on. It's totally up to you. Now, suspension's all rebuilt. The pieces that needed attention, all the bearings are done. New slides are on. New rear wheels on. I almost forgot to mention this. Take the opportunity to grease all the cross rails. They all have a Zerk or a grease fitting on them. Cold temperature grease is the best if you've got it. If not, a good quality grease at the least. So this is ready to reinstall. Now, suspension just goes back in to the track and the tunnel the opposite way that I took it out. I'm going to get it inside the track, reload the springs, and then bolt it up. Now, this did take a little fiddling, but it goes in the same way it came out. So it came out from the back this way and out, so it went in this way and swung back in. It is a little bit of a pain getting over all these lugs. That's where the 2x2 comes in. You can slide this under here, just like when I took it out, and that'll help you slide over top of these and the suspension slide in, pull the 2x2 out, let it drop down, swing the ass end in. Now simply rotate these spring arms back around and lock them back into this cam here. Now, I didn't get replacement ones. I'm just going to roll these ones over so the flat side is facing down, and they'll be good enough. I mentioned earlier, I think they're supposed to wiggle back and forth, but they don't. They typically just get stuck, and then the spring just slides back and forth over top of them. So I carry on, get these springs loaded. Over the wheel, locks in. By doing so, the suspension is now stretched back out, reloaded. I can start lowering it down and finding the mounting holes and get the bolts in. Now, I have to mention, did have a chain suspended from the rafter, wrapped around the back bar here, just in case this jack kicked out. The machine wouldn't land on top of me and possibly get a personal injury. Now, machine is pretty much on the ground. The jack is holding it up a tiny bit. I've got my ratchet strap here, and I wrapped it around through the suspension here and onto the bumper back here, tightened it up, and that pulled this bolt hole up so that it lines up on both sides. Now I can put the front bolts in, not 100% tight, but almost. And then I'll have to do the same thing with the ratchet strap, tie it in here, bring it up to there, ratchet it down to pull the bolt that's back here up into this position here. Now I did exactly what I said. I put the ratchet strap around this shaft here, tied it onto the suspension up there, ratcheted it down. That brings this down, loads this spring, let the jack down. Now the hole lines up. So I can put a bolt in here, go to the other side, any minor adjustments, and get that bolt back in. Once those 4 bolts are in, get them all tightened up. Suspension is in, bolts are tightened up, strap is out. Now you can see there's a considerable amount of slop in this track. And if you recall, back here on the adjuster, I only loosened off this jam nut and then backed the adjuster bolt out. So I'm going to assume that this track has never been adjusted since the last set of slides were put on. So I didn't move this jam bolt or nut, sorry. So I'm going to assume this is still in the correct position. I tighten these up and lock these down and see where I'm at. got everything all tightened up back to where it was. Now you might think that this looks pretty tight here, but I assure you, whoops, that's not cool. I assure you that is not too bad. The technical book, I believe, says suspend a 10-pound weight from the track, and you should have something like an inch of clearance here. I'm not putting that much force on the track here, and you see I've got a nice gap. So this was the original set position. I'm going to lock it here and then get it fired up and see how it tracks. It should run down the middle on both sides here, and if that's good, we're done. Alright, so you saw there, just let the track spin free a little bit there. Spun it around a few times and then shut it off. And we look here up the back wheel, measure that up. Just about 7/8 of an inch there. I'm going to check the other side here. Same spot. Yeah, I got about 7/8 of an inch there as well. So the track is running reasonably straight. So I'm really happy with that. No point in making any more adjustments, so I hope this video maybe helps somebody out. And as always, till the next one, guys, peace.